aka Better Black America TV on YouTube. And we got to get right into it because the president's big, beautiful bill passed and was signed into law on July 4th, 2025. Like he said it was, it is what it is. But we're going to talk about no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and have a discussion. And I might get in those comments today about the divide. Now, the no tax on tips, no tax on overtime just passed. And I'm seeing so much propaganda out there, the naysayers, the individuals who will benefit the most off of the no tax on tips, the no tax on overtime, the working class and the middle class. And I'm watching so much propaganda be put out in a sense of, no official documents, just basic posts, share posts of influencers, sharing posts of individuals that clearly are on the other side. So we got to figure this thing out, because when you talk about no tips, no tax and overtime, that is specifically for the working class. And then individuals will step out and say, oh, that's only up to $25,000. That's this and that's that. Like, listen, the bill just passed. We are greater than our limitations. So let's not put limitations on a bill that just has passed. So let's apply pressure. Let's apply pressure and make sure that bill is what it says it is. It says no tax on tips, no tax on overtime. I heard the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, says that no tax on tips, meaning, a factory worker or individual, a waitress or, a gig worker or anybody that's pretty much has a job that received taxes. Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, said on the House floor that those, the monies is 100% for the individual that earned that tip, not for the federal government. And he made it clear. So if Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, is basically saying that 100% of your tips belongs to you and not the federal government, then we need to hold accountable to that. Instead of listening to the propaganda, listening to the naysayers, throw things out there because they don't want to see that the Trump administration gets some wins, or they don't want to see the Trump brand grows, because there are some working class individuals that are figuring it out, that America no longer be divided. Okay, we have to understand that this is one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So justice for all. We have gotten tax justice. The biggest winner in Trump's big beautiful was the working class. 27.1% tax cuts goes to the lowest of the working class tax bracket. But we can't have inflation because we have all these naysayers and the haters that pretty much want, to keep you hoodwinked, bamboozled, led astray. They want to keep you in the dark. So what I'm saying is the tax code on no tax on tips, no tax on overtime has not even been written into law yet. So why are we putting limitations and a cap on it? I've seen a caption, I call it propaganda, and an individual basically said, oh, you can only claim $25,000 of your tips. Mike Johnson said, the Speaker of the House said 100%. 100%. Black Lives Matters. I got you. That's in the comments. So 100 taxes belong to you. And it's basically, and then I've seen propaganda where individuals would say, oh, that's only cash tips. What about card? Means card and cash. So if you a tip earning employee or a waitress, and you get and somebody that you service or is using their credit card, okay, and then they write on that section where it says tips, and they give you a $30 tip. You go home that day with that $30, meaning your organization, your restaurant, your bar, wherever you work for, they have to cash you out before you go home. So we're not going to sit back and, put limitations and on things that just happen, and all lives matters, because somebody put Black Lives Matters in the comment. Another one put White Lives Matters in the comments. All lives matters here on the Better Black America TV. All are welcome. Okay. So let's start the debate and end the discussion on the no tax on tips and no tax on overtime. Because like I said, Mike Johnson said that the 100% of the tips goes to the worker and not the federal government. So if I was a wage earning employee, okay, I'm filing exempt for the rest of the year. And we're going to figure this thing out, because this is a situation where America, or working class, can actually grow. Where the working class don't have to worry about your disposition, your situation. Because if you are a working class individual, your next goal needs to be middle class. And if you are a middle class individual, you need to be, rich and wealthy. But you got to grow up. Okay, you got to focus and do what you need to do. So no tax on tips. The federal government, the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, Republican out of Louisiana, basically said that 100% of your tips goes in your pocket, whether it's card or cash. So when individuals sit back and send out that propaganda, let's pretty much challenge them and have them understand that we put limitations on ourselves, because the bill just passed. So if the Speaker of the House and the President of the United States says that no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, then we have to hold them to their word 1%. And if there's an issue with the IRS, the federal government is to deal with that, because I'm looking at an abolishment of the IRS down the road, because taxation is nothing but sharecropping. But that's a whole nother conversation. But I'm here to set the record straight and to debunk all of the propaganda from the haters, from the liberal media, from the broke, busted, and disgusted. Because I know an individual who, pretty much has a job where they, and then I'm scrolling and I see in red, bold print, talking about that you would be taxed at the end of the year. That, listen, if somebody gave you a tip, put that tip in your pocket. Don't say a word. If you are a wage earning employee working at a restaurant and an individual tip you with their card and they write tip on the receipt, go to the cash register. Okay. Open that cash register, put that in your pocket. That is money 100%. And I am here today to debunk all the lies, the fake news, and all the haters putting out this propaganda. And one thing about propaganda is that individuals just share it and put it, people really don't even believe anything. But what I'm saying is, and I'm talking about that, that big, beautiful bill that passed, but that no tax on tips and no tax on overtime is solely for the wage earner and the working class. So that is a big victory for the working. So now we need to make sure that this thing coming to fruition, that the tax code is written correctly, because 1% of tips is your money. You don't supposed to share your tips or anything like that. Now, I understand if you are a gig employee, or if you are, a DoorDash or something like that, and they tip on a card, that's the conversation, that we got to have. But that money belongs to you. But, we got to figure out what the process is. But if you're working in a restaurant and you get tipped, put all that money in your pocket, especially if it's cash. And then if your boss or manager say, did you get tips? That's my money. Yes, I got tipped. Okay. And tips are cash or card. So don't sit back and listen to any of the lies, any of the hate, any of these people that's putting that propaganda out. That's basically saying, how can you, no tax on tips be something good when everybody use card? It goes to card as well as cash. So please, stop it, because this is a working class win. No tax on overtime. I know police officers, firemen, nurses, individuals that pretty much have overtime, into their daily schedule, are benefiting from this. And we got to make sure, that it is what it is. And I'm going to say that all you individuals, and I'm giving you some advice, that if you do, have that high end job where you are making, overtime on a daily basis, meaning you work 12 hours mandatory, I would suggest that you go and you file exempt right now. File 100% exempt. And then at the end of the year, let your tax guy understand that what was the difference between overtime pay, meaning anything over an 8-hour shift, is your overtime pay. So this is how we win. We cannot sit and act as if we're, want to be against ourselves. This is something we should be celebrating. Somebody put in a comment, BS. It could be BS to an individual that's have hatred in their heart, because some of us love our neighbors as we love ourselves. Meaning, if you love yourself, you cannot have hatred or hate another human being. Okay, so Donald Trump and the Trump administration is doing, big things for the United States. The poorest tax bracket got a 27% raise by the president of the United States. Whether you're Republican or Democrat, whether you like it or not, you say thank you. Oh, but his rich and wealthy friends got a flat 3.3% tax increase. Okay, basically meaning, they pretty much can write off 3.3% of their taxes. But when you look at the working class, it's 27.1%. The big beautiful bill, the biggest winner is the working class, because the great American divide, we cannot be divided. And it seems like the party that's supposed to be the racist, party, the Republican Party, is doing the will of the people, and they are using the Constitution to make it right. And you hearing that from a black, because as a black man who's been a Democrat, who has learned that the Democratic Party is the enemy of black America. Think about it. Because what's the 48 laws of power? You keep your friends close, your enemies closer, right? You keep your friends close and your enemies closer. So when you sit back and say, oh, Trump doesn't have any black people in his cabinet, because he don't have no black enemies to basically put on that he could control. Okay, the only black Trump's cabinet is the director of HUD. I can't recall his name, but he was a former NFL football player. He's the director of HUD. HUD is Housing of Urban Development. Okay, and contrary to popular belief, HUD is still there. Okay, that HUD. Okay, they're working on a program where, when we would have to pay 3%, down payment on the first time home buyer, they're working on legislation to basically put 100%. Because it's time for us to start buying homes. They've been talking about eliminating taxes for homeowners who own their homes 100%. Because just imagine if you owned your home outright, you're still getting a tax. So that's not your home. Your home if you don't pay your taxes. So it seems like the Republican Party is making America what it was supposed to be, because post-Civil War, the Democratic Party rebranded itself and pretty much put the black man on. I say black man in black America, I'm going to start referring to the slaves. Okay, because it's still, mass incarceration. The 13th Amendment reads neither slavery or voluntary servitude unless criminalized. So that criminalization allows modern day slavery. And to confirm that fact, Proposition 6 here in the state of California if we'd have voted yes on Prop 6, we would have eliminated involuntary servitude, meaning we would have ended slavery in the California state constitution. But the governor, the mayor, the hierarchy, they made sure that didn't pass. So I'm going to start referring to black America as the slaves. So just to make my point make sense, the party embraced the black race. They took elected few of black individuals and, put us on and gave us the illusion of equality. Okay. No. Basically, when the party put a black man on, that black man is deemed a slave for the party. And that black man or black woman is forced to do what they're told to do. And one of my favorite movies is Django. And Django was in Texas. In Texas, we celebrate Juneteenth because the slaves, it took them a full physical year before they even realized that they were free. When the brothers start riding through on horses, the Buffalo Soldiers, but if you can't read, you don't know but just think about how in Django, the slave master, Candyland, he was surrounded by Negroes. Samuel Jackson's character, he had all these bed wenches and all of these black people. That is the greatest depiction of the Democratic Party, because when you look at the Republican Party, yes, they're racist, okay, but I can respect a racist more than somebody that's, supreme, a white supremacy, because when you're a racist, you might live in an all white neighborhood. When you're racist, you might not have no black friends. When you are racist, you might go to a PWI, which is a predominantly white institution, and you really don't have to have no dealings with people outside of your race. But when black people come into your race, they sound like you, walk like you, talk like you, and more, and pretty much are desiring to marry, a white female. And you could call it what you want, but that's factual information. But when you look at the Democratic Party, man, they surround themselves with the Negroes. Look at Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton went on the Arsenio Hall show, played saxophone, and we called him the first black president. But what did that first black president do? He signed a 94 crime bill, meaning he locked up brothers more than any other president in history of the world. And mass incarceration till this day is still a thing. So we want to sit back and try to, I'm so racist. A racist is the easiest thing to deal with, because I'm sure if you're living in an urban city, you never seen a person walk a MAGA hat. I walk around with my mate, African American black again. They says MAGA until they read it. Okay, because African American is an ethnicity just like all the other ethnicities, but our races are. But look at the Democratic Party. When you put on a black Democrat, that Democrat is supporting and standing up for white supremacy. Just like in the civil rights era, when desegregation, when the Republican Party or the federal government, let me say federal government, was integrating or desegregating the schools, John F. Kennedy had to send the National Guard to the Alabama because the governor of Alabama, George Wallace, he was out there preaching, talking about segregation now, segregation forever, meaning the Democratic South, the Southern strategy, did not want black to be equal. They didn't want black people to go eat in their restaurants, go to their schools, and it's summertime now, go jump in the pool. A black person jump in that pool, they'll drain all the water out just because they don't want to have no dealings with you. But how did they expand, and how did they survive, and how are they still liable today? Lyndon B. Johnson is on record, people. That man said, I'm going to have these Negroes voting Democratic for the next 200 years. Call in those Negro leaders. He brought in Martin Luther King, everything they wanted with the civil rights. But they got played. They got played like a banjo, because those civil rights, that whole movement was hijacked by the Karens. And when I say Karens, was hijacked by the Women's Live movement. Anger, she went in there and got the funding for Planned Parenthood, which is basically to kill black babies. Okay, think about that. Okay, because everything when it comes to civil rights, it had nothing to do with no immigrants. It had nothing to do with, migrants. It had everything to do with the slave. This is why the Supreme Court sided with the president last week on birthright citizenship, because that had nothing to do with any migrant. Anything that's on the Constitution, 14th Amendment back to the Bill of Rights, it refers to, the slave. And this is how we win, because the slave is figuring it out and is deciding to go independent. See, when I talk about, the Democratic Party, and I have an argument with a female or a beta black male, and they talking about, well, Trump this and Trump that. No. I'm saying is, since we are in a pickle or in a terrible situation as a race of people, and I'm talking about me or you, I'm talking about as a group, why not declare our independence? Meaning, let's divorce the party that's been enabling us for the last years, and that's the Democratic Party. Because if you are a part of the Democratic Party, you are forced to support the killing of unborn children. Okay, instead of having a campaign, teenage pregnancy, let's talk about contraceptive, let's do all of this. No, there's no limitation on what we call abortion. And if you were to run as a political figure and you are getting finances from individuals who don't support the Democratic Party, which is white supremacy, you can have an opinion. So if they ask you a question about abortion, so Ms. Glover, so do you support abortion? Obviously, you're running for your Democratic seat. So what is it? First trimester, second trimester, third trimester? When Trump said that to Kamala Harris, what did she say? Come on. Because she knew he trapped her. Because you supposed to say, I support the woman's right to choose. Okay. Now, That's going against God. That's going against everything you believe in. So meaning you just sold your soul to a political party and an organization. So number two, you have to support born males having the ability to compete with born females in sports. So if you are a Democrat, okay, you talk about the racist Republicans, but if you are a Democrat, you have to support an individual, a man who was not good enough to make the male sports or the boys team. You have to support competing with your daughters, your born females. So the Republican Party is, hey, maybe they have more morals than the Democratic Party, but hey, we got to expose what we're doing. So I'm not sitting back saying, go run to the Democratic Party. I'm saying we're going to divorce this wicked organization, this wicked operation, whose original sin is the enslavement of black people. The Democratic Party fought to preserve slavery. They did. They separated from the Union. Okay. And it's not debatable, but they use these females and, the bourgeoisie, the Divine Nine, and these beta males to push a narrative and an agenda because they don't. So any individuals that's pushing an agenda that opposes their personal disposition is lost and have sold their soul to the devil. And yes, I said it because I know some black people who are in the lowest tax bracket, and they got a issue with the federal government that just gave them a 27.1 tax cut, meaning you just got a 27% raise. When the county pretty much protested here in LA because for the last 2 years we didn't get our locked in 3.5% rate. 3.5%. President of the United States just gave y'all 27.1% raise. But you got an issue with that. I know some individuals that work at the Olive Garden. They didn't borrow some money from me, and they would sit back and say, oh, that's some BS. Forget that no tax on tips. Really? How dumb and ignorant is that? That's your money. So what I'm saying is you got to divorce this toxic, wicked situation that you're married to. Because when you divorce, you have an opportunity to be single. And being single, metaphorically, is being independent. Meaning I could care less about a Republican or Democrat. I'm looking at my disposition. So I'm in that lower tax bracket. The federal government just gave us a 27% tax raise. A raise. We're going to have more money in our pocket because of this bill. And I'm a hourly worker as well as a tip earner. The president states no tax on tips. It was signed into law on June 4th. The Speaker of the House, before it was actually signed, said that tip earners get an opportunity to keep 100% of their tips. And I'm going to say this again, 100% of your tips goes to you in your pocket. It belongs to you and not the federal government, unquote. So that is for the work. But since you're married to this toxic situation that wants you to kill yourself, okay, that wants you to don't love yourself, that want you to promote white supremacy, that want you to promote black genocide, killing babies, that want you to support promoting born males competing in female sports, that promotes men sleeping with men or men lying with men. We lie with women. And according to the Bible, that's an abomination. You're forced to support a party that signed laws and legislation to keep slavery intact. The 94 crime bill, Bill Clinton signed that. Hillary Clinton went on a publicity tour. These are not regular humans. They're super predators and they need to be brought to heel. Joe Biden promoted this bill in the Senate. Joe Biden did. He said, they need to be behind bars. He said before they kill you, kill your mother, your grandmother, your son, your daughter, they need to be in jail. They demonized the slave. Okay. And I'm going to say this because slave is a reference to black American, more importantly, alpha male black Americans, because the black female, she can play the game. A beta male He will basically just promote the female's agenda because he's siding with his massa, the Democratic Party. Okay, because I debate so much with, beta males. Okay, because the female, they just, hey, they done, because they know being used as a bed wench and concubine to get right to the front of the line and just say, oh no, the joke's on you, because they did that to us. So now that the black man is coming out of the woodworks, the black man is, we've been woke, but now here's an opportunity for us to press the line, because the Democratic Party is the party of slavery. And one of these, we cannot be connected to the Democratic Party anymore. And I'm not saying go be a Republican, because let me break down, before I get up out of here, the difference between the Republicans and the Democrats. Now, the Republicans, like mentioned, okay, Trump is racist. You can say whatever you want to say, okay, but racism don't hurt nobody. White supremacy does. And what does the term, and I got a whole lot of people in that. So what does keep your friends close and your enemies mean to you? Okay, because when you keep your enemy closer, that means you can control your enemy. Now you see why Lincoln said, we're going to have these niggers voting Democratic for the next 200 years, because they pretty much put their enemy in a position of power, but just by face, blackface. Because if they put you in power, you're going to have to do what they say do, because if they make you, they could break you. And we look at the media all the time, and this is why individuals are celebrating Puffy or P. Diddy, getting off those egregious charges, because he was put on them. He was down with Obama, the Vote or Die campaign, but somehow he woke up and said, I'm not going to do that anymore. And look what he have to do with, because if they make you, they can break you. If they don't make you, they can't break you. So what I'm saying is, don't cut a deal with the devil. And if you have cut a deal with the devil, repent, because the kingdom of heaven is at hand with no condemnation. All you got to do, my bad, moving on. But what does keep your friend close and your enemies closer mean? Meaning, let me put that slave in my cabinet. Let me put that slave on my team, so I can control that slave, so I can manipulate that slave, so I can tell that slave to get out and talk to them people and tell them exactly what I want you to tell them. And they tell you to say, oh, talk about the Republicans on how racist they are and how this and how that, when a Republican ain't did nothing to you or me but listen, try to free us and, emancipate us. Because a lot of people don't understand that abolitionist movement. And we're going to start talking about that, because this is our moment. We got our boots on the ground, so to speak. It's time for us to move away from this two-party system. And and I have to say this, because anytime that I say something that triggers individuals, well, Donald Trump, it ain't got nothing to do with no Donald Trump. It has to do with you, your family, your disposition. Okay? So what I'm saying is, as a black race, we got to divorce the Democratic Party and be single. And metaphorically speaking, when I mean be single, mean be non-dependent, meaning be swing voters, meaning, anytime that an election come around, we got to go talk to the black community and find out what the black community want, because we have an agenda. But we cannot have an agenda as long as we have an association, the party of slavery, with the party of the black codes, with the party Jim Crow, with the party of mass incarceration. So what I'm saying is, we have to seek a divorce. And when you get a divorce, get compensation. They owe us some alimony. Okay, this is why the black man has turned on the Democratic Party, because we, spend all that time here in the state of California working on this reparations agenda, only for the state legislator to pass and them decide not to put it on the governor's desk, because he told them, if you put this bill on my desk, I'm going to veto it. That's exactly what Gavin Newsom told the California state legislator. Stephen Bradford confirmed that, and Stephen Bradford went on record, okay, and said it was, pointless of just putting the bill on the table for him to, okay. So how can we be compensated when we're still married to this monster? How can we get compensation? How can we even move on as a people? Because I remember the movie Color Purple. Until you do right by me, everything that you do will fail. So this is why the migrant community getting chased around like runaway slaves, because that's what they do. Okay. And one of the biggest mistakes that I believe the Latino community did was, fall for, what the white did. The white women. When I say the white women, the ACLU and Planned Parenthood and all these liberal organizations that pretty much want to, Constitution and manipulate it into something that it was not. And then basically, oh, this is a land of immigrants. It don't say nothing about no land of immigrants and no Constitution. And I feel sorry for the mayor of LA, Karen Bass, who's forced to do, what her massa says. Because like I said, I have to refer to Massa because she goes on record and she has to promote an agenda supremacy. And the reason why the Republicans are running the Latinos out, because the biggest mistake that they made was joining on and acting as if civil rights was for them. Civil rights had nothing to do with the immigrants. Civil rights had nothing to do with anything. The civil rights movement had everything to do with the slave. Period. So now you want to take that and say, oh, my Fourth Amendment, my due process was violated. Oh, well, the Constitution says, you only have due process and they call citizens' rights. So if you're not a citizen, you have no right. So they could just round you up, put you in an unmarked vehicle, fly you down to Alligator Alcatraz in Florida, and we don't know what happened to you. And the reason that they're doing this is the Latino community, they went too far. Okay. Because I've been called a mayate. Okay. They didn't talk to Africa, so sorry, not sorry. I have a heart. I understand, but y'all wasn't helping us when Bill passed that 94 crime bill. And, we sitting on the block and the police car pull up and tell everybody to get up and put your hands behind your head and all of that, harassing us, and then locked us up, because slavery is still legal. But like I said, the biggest mistake y'all made is, starting to act as if y'all had the same privilege or the same struggle as Black America. Because I started hearing the Latinos say, because the discrimination, of the blacks and the browns, the inequality of the blacks and the browns, like, nah. Okay, because based on the census, you guys are Caucasian. What you should have did was, flip the script like the Jews did, okay, and assimilate as white. That's what you should have did. But since you wanted to, act like you was down with the blacks, they're showing you right now that you're not. And the Republican Party that, because they know what the original context of that Constitution was for. But the Democratic Party, the party of slavery, is trying to erase history, trying to take the racist Confederate statues, trying to take things out of the history books because they're to rebrand themselves, and the Republican Party is not going to let them do that. And that's the one thing that I could applaud, because let us know the truth. Let us understand it. Let them know that, Robert E. Lee was a Confederate general for the Dixiecratic South who, separated from the Union to preserve slavery. Let them know George Wallace blocked the government by pretty much, Jay had to send a National Guard down there just to get some black people to be able to walk and to be escorted on the campus, University of Alabama. And George Wallace blocked the federal government. They had to send the National Guard. And George Wallace was a Democrat. Segregation now, segregation forever. This was just in the 1663, not long ago. And now you have Mayor Bass, Democrat. Now you have Gavin Newsom, governor, Democrat, going against the federal government. You see contrast? So what I'm saying is their issue is the control of the slave. More importantly, the black man and his family. So now that we got to get divorced, and metaphorically speaking, when an individual get a divorce, they don't go marry somebody else, immediately or quickly. they take some time off. They reflect, they start investing in themselves. They start doing a whole lot of things to put themselves in a better situation. And that's all I'm saying to Black America. Okay. And I'm saying this on A Better Black America YouTube, because if Black America got its act together, the world would be a better place. But America is cursed because of what they've done to the slave and what the Democratic Party is still trying to do today. Now, a racist live over there. Okay. I ain't see no MAGA hats in the hood. None of that. Thousand Oaks or South Orange County. But these Democrats, they'll come and show up and, pop and show you. Hey, you need anything? Can we help? Can you let us in? Like the movie Sinners. Just think about it. They want, I've been to functions with white women that have invited me, to speak, and they sit back. We want to learn. Like, what are you trying to learn? And then they'll sit back and say, well, we understand the struggle of the Black race because we're women. No. And then the Latinos want to sit back and, join that party. Nah. We got to be, site specific for our race and our condition. Because America will never be who she's supposed to be or what she's supposed to be if America does not settle its debt with Black America. Before Dr. King was assassinated, what we call the Poor People's Party, he went to Washington. That high have a drink speech, that was something that just popped in his head, because they went to start the Poor People's Party, which is outside of the Republican and Democrat. Because when Lyndon B. Johnson did that, put us on, we overwhelmingly voted for Democrats. See, Kennedy, was a different Democrat, but when Lyndon B came in there, we just solely voted out to the Democratic Party. And when Dr. King saw that, he's on record saying to Harry Belafonte that I believe I delivered my people into a burning house. So just like the Hebrew boys, we've been in that burning house for 60 years and we haven't on fire yet. So now it's time for us to be smart, to be wise, and to understand what's really going on and just walk out of that burning house. Okay. And I'm not saying go march into the Republic. Okay. Let me give you scripture, or biblical context. So when they talked to Jesus, Jesus said, I didn't come to change the scribe or the Pharisee. And the scribe and the Pharisee could easily be a Republican and a Democrat, or race or supremacy. Racism is Republican. Okay. Racism. Don't mess with those Negroes. I live in a gated community in South Orange County. I live in Thousand Oaks. I go to an all-white school. I go to an all-white summer camp. And God bless what happened in Texas. But I haven't seen the blacks. God said, I'll punish the oppressors. That's the word. So that's a natural disaster that's getting worse as the days go on. And I can't even fathom going through something like that. But in this of really understanding and separating yourselves from, those, who could be doomed, those who, love God, those who, love all humanity. Okay. Because racism is an issue as well. If you don't want to be around these people, so that must mean that you're better than, you think you're better individuals. Hi. Somebody said hi in the comments. So when we look at these situations, we got to be honest with ourselves, because racism is literally, separation and being segregated. Okay. But supremacy is right in your face. I'm your neighbor. They hate you. But somehow, some way, like I asked the question, what does keep your friends close and enemies closer mean? Okay. And that's one of the laws of power that the Democratic Party decided to do, because, Trump got friends, but apparently don't have no enemies, because there ain't no black people in his cabinet. But he do have black advisors. He do talk to black people. He do listen. Okay. But the party as a whole, okay, keep your friends close and enemies. That means we're going to put them on with us, and we're going to have them say what we want them to say. We're going to have them to do what we want them to do. And we're going to have them legislation that will hurt them, their community as a whole. It's like black people is down with killing black babies. Disproportionately, Planned Parenthood, murders more babies in the black community than anything. Okay. And then the promotion of men sleeping with men. And then the promotion of mass incarceration of slavery today. So we're going to put the black man on. We're going to put Obama in as president and have him, do our dirty work. It's like when you look at how America is being divided, you got the federal government doing its job, making sure to keep the climate down, securing the southern border, doing what they believe they need to do to make this country what it was supposed to be. But then you have the states' rights separating themselves from the federal government, no different than they did in succession time when the Union, had to go to war with the Democratic Dixiecratic South, because the Southern strategy is real. When people say, the party didn't switch, the people felt shunned because now that you guys taking these slaves, that you wouldn't even that you wouldn't even let come in your house, that you may go through the back door. Now you praising them. Now you promoting them. Oh, it's a natural progression to go be a Republican. Okay. But if you look at the root causes of it, supremacy is embedded in the Democratic Party. Yeah, I said it. White supremacy is embedded in the Democratic Party. Last time that I checked, Trump from Jamaica, Queens, New York, and the first president that don't have no ties. Okay. And I'm just being honest with you, but it's not about them. It's about us. Because remember, the great poet said they not like us. Okay. So when we talk about the Democratic Party, this is just adults making reasonable, sound decision to stop supporting the party of slavery. Period. Stop supporting the party of Jim. Stop supporting the party of segregation. Stop supporting the party of black codes. Okay? Because the black codes, look what's going on with the migrants. Running them up out of here did when they was chasing down, the black man, forcing him into involuntary servitude. At least they not making y'all slaves. They putting y'all up, sending y'all back to y'all country, feeding you, but it's what it is. So sorry, not sorry on that. But we got to understand, our freedom and liberation is in our independence. And as, what political party did Jesus belong to? Clearly was an independent. He said, respect the Oval Office, meaning it's on record, render unto Caesar's what is Caesar's. But we are to render unto God what is. So we cannot continue and allow, another generation to be hoodwinked, bamboozled, led astray, and to run amok and to be a part of the Democratic Party. The Democratic is the party that has no morals. Okay. Their biggest function is pride. Pride is the number one deadly sin. Okay. And I'm not saying, be proud of who you are as an individual. I've never seen a whoremongering man brag about how many women he sleep with on public record and basically tell people, except me, I got 6 women that I sleep with. You got to respect my get down. No, he does it and he just figure it out. And then eventually, he can't do it more than he repents and get his life back together. But we're not going to be sitting back and promoting anything that goes against our sovereignty, our God. And we are losing the brand, but we can't lose it on our watch. So this is the rally cry, because, red and the blue and you partisan independent. We can't support either side, because if you support the Republicans, you're supporting racism. If you support the Democratic Party, you're supporting white supremacy. Okay. And like I said, before I get up out of here, watch Django again in Candyland. Candyland, that was a Democrat. Samuel Jackson was a Democrat, because supremacy puts, whites in a powerful position to have authority and power over people, just like the Democratic Party as a whole. The Republicans are talking about less government. The Republican Party is looking out for the average citizen. And I can say the big, beautiful bill, the no tax on tips, no overtime, is a clear indication that it's looking out for the working class. Contrary to popular belief, it's more the white race is the majority. So clearly by default, it's more poor whites than it is, blacks, Latin, Asians, or anything else. So they're looking out for their own. But fortunately, we benefit from what's going on. And that's looking at it from a racist perspective. But from a white supremacy perspective, go ahead and control the Negroes. Tell them what to do. Tell them what to say. Good morning to you. How you doing? Control them, manipulate them, have them sell their soul for influence. Control the music, control the narrative, control their album. Because I've seen individuals who just posted, a post about the no tax on tips and no tax on overtime, but the tax reform bill has not been written out. The bill passed, so now it has to be brought into fruition. And the Speaker of the House said 100% of your tips goes to you in your pocket and your bank account because it belongs to you and not the federal government. No tax on overtime. So we got to figure this one out. But I would suggest that everybody that's a job that requires overtime, okay, go ahead, to HR and write exemption so you could be exempted of taxes. And then at the end of the year, when you file your taxes, the code would be written. They will decipher the difference between your overtime pay versus salary or your hourly pay. And then you can work it out from that perspective. Okay, we can and we will. Okay, so we're not going to have any limitations on any of these things. We're going to make sure we do what we need to do. But I'm telling you, it's time. We put in our divorce papers. Okay, we're separated, and the black race can no longer support the Democratic Party because that's the party of white supremacy. And white supremacy means, control, power, and authority. Who's the power and authority over the Democratic Party? White people. Okay. And then there's a whole bunch of Jews who assimilated us. And that's what I think the Latinos should have did. Y'all should have, if your name was Jorge Gonzalez, you should have changed your name to Mike Brown. Okay. To Mike Stevenson, to Michael, okay. Because the Jews did the same thing. A lot of Jewish individuals back when Hollywood was being created, like George Burns and Winona Ryder and all of these people, they Jewish people that changed their names and they assimilated as white. See, as a black man, I can't, assimilate because it is what it is. Okay. You see a black man. Okay. But when they see you, a lot of you get the right haircut. If you speak, differently, we don't know whatever you are. You white to us. Okay, that's what you should have did instead of trying to partner up with Lives Matters and try to take the 13th Amendment and the 14th Amendment and say it's about America is not a country of immigrants. It was founded, through the immigrants, through the slave trade and all of that, but at 1770, it is what it is. And there's laws and rules that we all must abide by. It is what it is. So getting up out of here, and I have the last, let me see here, Dr. Rap put in, and I'm gonna go ahead and go in the comments and answer this one question, then I'm out. I got a busy schedule today. Third, no overtime means that you will not work over 40 hours, and that is a all-face lie. Dr. Rap is a liar, okay? If you are a registered nurse, you work 12-hour shifts. Think about it. You work 12-hour shifts. You work 3 or 4 12-hour shifts. If you are a fireman, you on that clock round. So stop lying. Stop lying. This is what I'm saying. This is the Democrats that come to want to ruin the party because they're the bastards of the party. And that's a lie. Okay. With this immigration thing going on, a lot of individuals, co-workers are not showing up. It's more overtime that's available right now than anything planet. Now, if you are a scum, if you are a scum job owner and you basically put a limit, that's case by case. But in the sense of, oh, sir, no overtime means that you will not work over 40 hours. That is a bald-faced lie, meaning you get that time and a half. And if you work that double, you get that double time. So don't let, no disrespect, just for the content. Don't let idiots like Dr. Rap And these broke Democrats lie to you because they have no hope and they don't love themselves. See, individuals that go negative don't love themselves. So we got to start loving ourselves so we can love our neighbors. So that's a lie. Okay. So there's jobs that has guaranteed overtime. And I know nurses, they work 12-hour shifts. That's why they make the big buck, because after that 8 hour, that time and a half kick in. And then after, if they work over 4 hours, that double time kicks in. And according to the no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, that's your bread. So now you overtime you want and stack your bank account, get your bread up and stop, falling by the liberal media and the haters that hate the fact that the working class got a big win. Think about it. And there's more to come. So I appreciate you, Dr. Rap. No pun intended. I just used you, as, I could vent a little bit because I'm so tired of the ignorance. I'm so tired of people trying to just make it differently other than what it is. No tax on tips. That's your bread. Okay. 100% of that, whether it's cash or card. And if you work overtime, that is your bread. That time and a half, 4 hours. And if you work 2 hours over that, that's double time. You're welcome. Okay. Thanks to the Trump administration, and Black America has divorced, and we just waiting to get this paperwork right. The Democratic Party. It doesn't mean we're running to be Republican. We're going to be single politically, which means nonpartisan independence. Okay. It is what it is. So with that being said, man, y'all have an amazing day. This is your man, Bushion Glover, signing out. Better Black America TV on YouTube. Peace out.